A Sunak's revenge. The man who said, "I told you so." The opening. He stood there, calm, collected, the faint trace of a smile on his face. Rishi Sunak had been waiting for this moment for months, the moment when everyone would finally admit he was right all along. Keir Starmer sat across from him in the House of Commons, looking tired. The man who had won the biggest labor landslide in modern history just 6 months ago now looked like someone who'd lost everything. Because in a way, he had. The numbers didn't lie. Starmer's approval rating had crashed to 13%, the worst any prime minister had seen in recorded history. The man who promised change had become the most hated leader Britain had ever elected. And Rishi Sunak, he was about to twist the knife. The debate that changed everything. Go back to June 2024. The election debates, Sunak versus Starmer. 4 brutal nights of television where two men fought for the soul of Britain. The first debate started civilly enough. Handshakes, smiles, the usual political theater. But within minutes, Sunak launched his first attack, the £2,000 claim. He looked directly into the camera and said Labour would raise taxes by £2,000 per household. Starmer's response was immediate. That's a lie, complete garbage. The Treasury hasn't verified those numbers. The media sided with Starmer. Fact checkers called it misleading. Labour supporters celebrated. Sunak had been caught spreading misinformation. The Conservative leader looked desperate, flailing, trying anything to save his sinking campaign. But Sunak didn't back down. In the second debate, he doubled down. You can call it a lie all you want, Keir, but when people get their tax bills next year, they'll remember this conversation. Starmer laughed it off. The audience laughed with him. Sunak was finished. Everyone knew it. Except Sunak wasn't lying. He was warning them. The promise versus the reality. Fast forward to October 2024. Rachel Reeves stood at the dispatch box delivering Labour's first budget. The room was tense. Everyone knew cuts were coming, but nobody expected what happened next. £26 billion in tax rises, the biggest tax increase in a generation, national insurance hikes, capital gains increases, inheritance tax changes, employer contributions surging. The numbers kept piling up, page after page of tax hikes that would hit millions of families. Do the math, spread those increases across Britain's households. The average? Just over £2,000 per family. Sunak had been right, word for word, number for number. But here's the thing. He wasn't in power anymore to say, "I told you so," from the prime minister's podium. He was sitting on the opposition benches as the leader of the opposition, a role he'd taken after losing the election. And from that position, he was about to unleash hell. The opposition leader rises Parliament question time. October 30th, 2024, the day after the budget. Rishi Sunak stood to ask his first question as opposition leader. The chamber went quiet. MPs leaned forward. Even Starmer's own backbenchers wanted to hear this. Sunak didn't shout. He didn't need to. His voice was steady, almost conversational. "Prime Minister, in June, you called my warnings about tax rises complete garbage. Yesterday, your Chancellor announced £26 billion in tax increases. That's £2,049 per household, almost exactly what I warned about. So my question is simple. Were you lying to the British people then, or are you lying to them now?" The Conservative benches erupted. Labour MPs tried to shout over them, but the damage was done. Cameras zoomed in on Starmer's face. He looked cornered. His response was weak, defensive. Something about difficult decisions and Tory mess and 14 years of failure. The usual script. But everyone in that room knew he'd been caught. Sunak had landed the first blow, but he was just getting started. The systematic destruction. Over the next 3 months, Sunak tore into Starmer with surgical precision. Every Wednesday at Prime Minister's Questions became a masterclass in political revenge. Week after week, the same pattern emerged. Sunak would quote something Starmer said during the campaign. He'd contrast it with what Labour actually did in government. He'd sit down and watch Starmer squirm immigration. During the debates, Starmer mocked Sunak's Rwanda plan as gimmicky and unworkable. He promised Labour had better solutions, a new border security command, working with European partners, processing claims faster. 3 months into Labor government, illegal crossings were up. The Rwanda deal was scrapped with no replacement. The French were demanding more money, and Starmer had no answers. Sunak stood in Parliament. I had a plan. You called it a gimmick. You canceled it on day one. So where's your plan, Prime Minister? Because the people crossing the channel are wondering the same thing. Starmer talked about working with international partners and tackling root causes. Sunak just smiled. So you don't have a plan? Thank you for confirming. The NHS betrayal. Then came healthcare. Oh, the NHS promises. Starmer had been relentless during the campaign. 40,000 more appointments every week, shorter waiting times, saving the health service from Tory destruction. By November 2024, NHS waiting lists hit record highs. A&E times were longer than ever. The promised appointments never materialized. Junior doctors went on strike. Again. The health service Starmer vowed to fix was getting worse. Sunak pounced. You told nurses you'd be different. You told doctors you'd listen. You told patients help was coming. The waiting lists are longer now than when I left office. At what point do you admit you sold them a fantasy? Starmer blamed the mess we inherited. Sunak shot back. Prime Minister, you've had 6 months. At some point, these become your waiting lists, your failures, your broken promises. The Conservative benches roared approval. Even some Labour MPs looked uncomfortable. Starmer was losing the room. But wait, before we see how Sunak delivered the final blow, you need to understand something crucial about what was happening behind the scenes. The cabinet collapse. While Sunak was attacking from the opposition benches, Starmer's own government was imploding from within. Sue Gray, the chief of staff, the woman who brought down Boris Johnson, resigned in October after months of internal warfare. Angela Rayner, the deputy prime minister and Starmer's supposed right hand, had been sidelined and humiliated. By November, she was barely speaking to the PM. Then came the ministers. Louise Hay quit over a fraud conviction that suddenly resurfaced. Tulip Siddiq resigned amid corruption allegations linked to her aunt, the former Bangladeshi prime minister. 2 cabinet ministers gone in weeks. The media smelled blood. Every day brought new stories of chaos, infighting, and dysfunction in Downing Street. This wasn't the steady, boring competence Starmer had promised. This was a government in free fall. And every week at PMQs, Sunak twisted the knife a little deeper. The budget leak scandal, November 13th, 2024. The day everything got worse for Starmer. Rachel Reeves was preparing to deliver an economic statement to Parliament. Except someone leaked the entire thing to the media 30 minutes before she stood up. The markets went haywire, the pound dropped, the opposition demanded investigations. Richard Hughes, the head of the Office for Budget Responsibility, was so disgusted, he resigned on the spot. In his resignation letter, he tore into Labour's complete lack of integrity and contempt for constitutional norms. The next day, Sunak stood in Parliament. His question was devastating in its simplicity. Prime Minister, you ran on restoring trust and integrity to British politics. Your Chancellor has just presided over the most damaging budget leak in modern history. The head of the OBR has resigned in protest. You promised you'd be different from us. So tell me, where exactly is this integrity you promised? Starmer tried to defend Reeves. He blamed ongoing investigations and said it would be inappropriate to comment. He looked weak, defensive, guilty. Sunak pressed harder. You suspended Tory MPs for less than this during the campaign. You demanded resignations for smaller failures. Will you hold your own Chancellor to the same standard you held us to? The answer was obvious. No, he wouldn't, because he couldn't afford to lose another minister. His government was barely holding together as it was. The Rwanda reckoning. But Sunak saved his most effective attack for immigration. Because this wasn't just about policy differences. This was personal. The Rwanda plan had been Sunak's signature policy. Send illegal migrants to Rwanda, break the business model of people smugglers, stop the boats. Labor had mocked it endlessly. Starmer called it expensive theater. His team made it a campaign centerpiece. Vote Labor and the Rwanda gimmick. Day one of the Labor government, Starmer scrapped the deal, just like he promised. By December, the consequences were clear. Crossings were surging. People smugglers were advertising that Britain was open again. The French government was demanding more money while doing less enforcement. The entire border control system was in chaos. In Parliament, Sunak's voice was ice cold. My plan was working. Crossings were down. Smugglers were worried. Then you canceled it with nothing to replace it. Nothing. And now you're watching the boats return while pretending this isn't your fault. How many more people have to die in the channel before you admit you were wrong? Starmer had no answer. He talked about international cooperation and processing centers abroad. Sunak interrupted. So you do want to send asylum seekers abroad. You just want to do it to Turkey and Greece instead of Rwanda. Tell me, Prime Minister, how is that morally superior? The chamber erupted. Starmer's face flushed red. He'd been caught in his own hypocrisy, opposing offshore processing while quietly negotiating the exact same thing with different countries. Sunak sat down. He'd won again, and everyone knew it. The I told you so moment, December 4th, 2024, Prime Minister's questions, the last session before Christmas recess. By now, the pattern was established. Every week, Sunak landed blow after blow. Every week, Starmer had no good answers. The PM's approval rating kept dropping. 19%, then 16%, then finally hitting that catastrophic 13%. Labor MPs were whispering about replacing him. The media was writing worst PM ever headlines, and Rishi Sunak was preparing his final strike before the break. He stood. The chamber went silent. Prime Minister, 6 months ago you promised change. Lower taxes, you raised them. Better NHS, it's gotten worse. Controlled immigration, the boats are back. Economic growth, we're in recession. You called my warnings lies. You mocked my solutions. You told Britain you were the answer. He paused. Let it sink in. So here's my question. When you look at the state of this country now, when you see the polls, when you read the headlines calling you the worst PM in history, do you ever think to yourself, maybe Rishi Sunak was right? The conservative benches went wild, cheering, shouting. Some MPs were literally standing and applauding. This was the moment they'd been waiting for. Total, complete, devastating revenge. Starmer tried to respond. Something about tough decisions and long-term plan and fixing 14 years of Tory damage. But his voice was drowned out. Nobody was listening anymore. Sunak had won. Completely, utterly, undeniably. The exit and the promise. 2 weeks later, Rishi Sunak stepped down as leader of the opposition. Kemi Badenoch took over the role. The official reason was that Sunak wanted to spend time with family and pursue opportunities in the private sector. The truth, he'd accomplished what he set out to do. He'd proven he was right. He'd exposed Starmer as a liar. He'd systematically destroyed the credibility of the Labour government. His work was done. He returned to his role at Goldman Sachs, made some speeches, collected his fees, but he stayed involved in politics. Just behind the scenes now. Because here's what nobody was saying publicly, but everyone knew. Rishi Sunak wasn't done with politics. Not really. By December 2024, Labour's support had collapsed. The Conservatives were surging in polls. Reform UK was splitting the vote. And people were starting to say something remarkable. Maybe Sunak wasn't so bad after all. Pollsters noticed a trend. When asked, who would make a better prime minister today, Starmer or Sunak? People were choosing Sunak. The man they'd rejected just months ago now looked like a competent leader compared to the chaos of Starmer's government. The 2029 whispers. In conservative circles, the whispers started early. 2029, the next general election. Labor would be weak, divided, unpopular. The perfect time for a comeback. And who better to lead it than the man who'd warned them? The man who'd been right about everything? The man who'd spent months systematically proving that he understood Britain's problems better than the guy who beat him? Sunak's allies weren't subtle about it. Interviews with phrases like never say never and if the party needs me. Op-eds about learning from defeat and coming back stronger. Social media activity carefully calibrated to keep him relevant without looking desperate. He was playing the long game, the very long game. Because here's the thing about political revenge. The sweetest kind isn't winning an argument in Parliament. It's making people regret they ever doubted you in the first place. The legacy of being right today, as Keir Starmer struggles with the lowest approval ratings in British history, as his government tears itself apart, as policy after policy fails, Rishi Sunak's warnings echo louder than ever. The £2,000 tax increase? Real. The Rwanda plan being necessary? Proven. The promises being unrealistic? Confirmed. The change being a fantasy? Undeniable. Every prediction Sunak made during those brutal debate nights has come true. Every warning he gave that was dismissed as desperation has been validated. Every policy he defended that was mocked has been vindicated. And the man himself, he's out of parliament now, but his influence is growing. Conservative MPs quote him constantly. Party members mention his name at meetings. Donors ask when he's coming back. The polls show people miss him. It's the ultimate revenge arc. Lose everything, get proven right about everything, watch your enemy destroy himself, and position yourself as the solution everyone ignored. The question nobody's asking. But here's what makes this story truly fascinating. Was Rishi Sunak actually trying to save Britain during those debates, or was he just trying to save his own reputation? Did he warn about tax rises because he cared about families, or because he wanted to be able to say, "I told you so" later? Did he defend the Rwanda plan because he believed in it or because he knew Starmer handling it would backfire? Did he oppose Labour's promises because they were unrealistic or because he wanted them to fail? The answer probably doesn't matter, because whether his motivations were noble or vengeful, whether he was a concerned statesman or a bitter politician, he was right about almost everything. And in politics, being right is the ultimate revenge. The room where it happened. Picture this. It's Wednesday afternoon, House of Commons, February 2025. Rishi Sunak is gone. Kemi Badenoch is asking the questions now. But MPs from both sides keep talking about what Rishi said and what Rishi warned about. Keir Starmer is still Prime Minister, but barely. His party is fractured. His ministers keep resigning. His poll numbers are catastrophic. Local elections are coming in May, and everyone expects a wipeout. Somewhere in London, Rishi Sunak is watching the coverage. Maybe he's in his office. Maybe he's at home with his family. Maybe he's in a Goldman Sachs meeting, phone buzzing with messages from conservative MPs asking for advice. And maybe, just maybe, he's smiling that same faint smile he had back in October when this all began. Because revenge isn't always about destroying your enemy directly. Sometimes it's about giving them exactly what they wanted and watching them realize it was poison all along. The unanswered question. So here we are, December 2024, 6 months after Labour's historic victory, 6 months after Rishi Sunak became the first sitting prime minister to lose his seat in an election since before World War II. Keir Starmer is the most unpopular prime minister in recorded history. Rishi Sunak was right about almost everything, but there's one question hanging over all of this. The question that keeps political observers up at night, the question that makes this story incomplete. What happens in 2029? Will Sunak return? Will the Conservatives ask him to lead them back to power? Will the British people, the same ones who rejected him so decisively, welcome him back because they've learned their lesson? Or is this just a temporary vindication? A brief moment where he gets to feel right before history moves on and forgets about him? The cameras are still rolling. The story isn't over. And Rishi Sunak, he's waiting, patient, prepared, watching Starmer destroy himself one policy failure at a time. Because the best revenge isn't served hot or cold. It's served slowly, one but beat, I told you so at a time, until everyone finally admits you were right all along. The question is, will they admit it in time for him to come back? Or will Starmer's collapse take Labour down so completely that someone else gets to pick up the pieces? Parliament will answer that question eventually. But for now, Rishi Sunak can rest easy, knowing he accomplished something rare in politics. He lost the battle, but he's winning the war. And sometimes that's the sweetest victory of all.